News 46. Local coverage you can count on.
At Healthcare Partners Medical Group, our mission is to provide the highest quality of healthcare to each and every patient. With 5 locations in Pahrump, we are local doctors you know and trust. We want to thank you for choosing us. Quality care starts here.
Left foot, left foot, left foot. No right, the jump. No right, lay up. I left the right, the jump. I left the right, lay up. No right, lay up. No right, lay up. Left the right, the jump. I left the right, lay up. No right, lay up.
Welcome to Semper Fi. I'm your host, Mark Bonstein, or as I was commonly referred to as Staff Sergeant B. We're going to get started on our show in just a second. First, we're going to do our usual what happened in this day in U.S. military history on September 8th. In the Navy in 1945, Vice Admiral John S. McCain, former commander of the U.S. Task Force 58, dies of a heart attack at the age of 61. And in the Air Force in 1954, a U.S. plane was shot down above Siberia. And in the Marine Corps in 1965, Marines and South Vietnamese forces launched Operation Piranha on the Badanag Peninsula, I hope I say that right, 23 miles south of the Marine barracks at Chu Lai. And in 2004 in the Army, Team A, 1st Battalion, 294th Infantry, totaling some 150 men, completes its training and prepares to deploy in support on the war on terror. So with just being September 8th and 9/11 quickly coming up, I have a couple things that I found in the Pahrump Valley Times. Remembering 9/11. On September 11th, the VFW, the American Legion, along with the Boy Scouts of America and Youth Organization, will host a flag retirement ceremony at 1 p.m. at their post located on Homestead Road. All members of the community are invited and encouraged to attend. And then on the next note, the Elks Lodge, they're going to do something as well. The Department 2796 will be having a 911 ceremony, dinner in remembrance of the tragic day on September 11th. And this will be at 220 East Basin. They're invited to all firefighters, police, EMS, search and rescue to join. The cost of the Elks members and the ghost is $750, and there'll be grilled pork chops, scalloped potatoes, vegetables, bread, and desserts will be served. There's a phone number you can call at 751-2796 to have your name put on the list, and this goes on September 8th. It starts on no later than September 8th, so all food can be purchased what they need for that process. Going to do something new. It's called Influential Leaders. So today's going to kind of be like a dry run, so bear with me as I do this. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I always felt that a lot of our past military leaders, they had a lot to contribute. So being in the Marine, influential leaders, and the first one's going to be on Chesty Puller. Every Marine I know knows him. Louis Brewall, in quotations, Chesty Puller. I think he got the name Chesty because he was a big barrel-chested guy. Lieutenant General Puller, he was born in June 26th of 1898. And he had an impressive career which spanned 37 years, from 1918 till 1955 when he retired. Puller is the most decorated Marine today. It was somebody who's received 5 Navy Crosses. That's a very high, up on getting your ribbons, that's a very high honor to get, 5 Navy Crosses. And if you read one of his citations, he probably should have got the Medal of Honor. During his career, he fought guerrillas in Haiti, Nicaragua, and participated in some of the bloodiest battles of World War II and the Korean War. And then, like I said, he retired in 1955. So Chesty Puller is the most decorated Marine in history. Lieutenant General Puller was also known as Chesty. His early life, we already discussed when he was born, and he died October 11th of 1971. His birthplace was West Point, Virginia. And his childhood idol was Stonewall Jackson. He wanted to enlist to fight in the Mexican at the Chorus Old, but his mother refused. He wanted to fight in the Mexican Wars, and his mom wouldn't let him because of his age. But at 17, he attended the Virginia Military Institute, but left at the end of his first year to enlist in the Marines, saying he wanted to be where the guns are. Meanwhile, World War I, he enlisted as a private, and then he went to boot camp at Parris Island. And soon after graduation, he was promoted to PFC, and then he went to NCO school, and then later on he went to OCS, Officers Candidate School, at Quantico, Virginia. And he graduated in 1919 as a second lieutenant. At the end of World War I, the Marines, they started downsizing, and Puller was put back into active status and given the rank of corporal. After being a lieutenant, then they downgraded him because, well, back then, you know, without the conflicts, they didn't need you. So if you wanted to stay in, you played their games, and then they did it that way. I want to play a quick little segment of a good movie. It's an HBO miniseries called The Pacific. If you've seen it, it's a real good movie, and it's from Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, and it's going to go through one of Chesty Puller's speeches, and then after that, we'll talk a little bit more about Chesty. So Jeff's going to run the clip real quick.
The uniform that you wear, the globe and anchor emblem that you have earned, will make the difference between the freedom of the world and its enslavement. December 7th was quite a day. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. On the same day, December 8th, on the other side of the international date line, places called Guam, Wake, Malay Peninsula, Hong Kong, the Philippine Islands were also attacked by the Army, Air Force, and Navy of the Empire of Japan. The Japanese are in the process of taking half of the world, and they mean to keep it with death from the air, land, and sea. Here is what the Japs are not expecting. The United States Marine Corps. Now, never mind Europe. The Nazis, Mussolini, Hitler is not going to be our job. Not until they can't whip them without us. The Pacific will be our theater of war. Marines will do battle with the Japs on tiny specks of turf that we have never heard of. You, non-commissioned officers, you are the sinew and the muscle of the Corps. The orders come from the brass, and you get it done. Whenever this war is over, when we have swept upon the main islands of Japan and destroyed every scrap of that empire, the strategy will have been that of others. The victory will have been won by you. You, the NCOs, with the chevrons on your sleeves and the instincts in your guts and the blood on your boots. Those of you who are lucky enough to get home for Christmas, hold your loved ones dearly and join them in prayers for peace on earth and goodwill toward all men. And then report back here, ready to sail across God's vast ocean, where we will meet our enemy and kill them all. Merry Christmas. Happy 1942.
Carry on.
All right, that was from the movie The Pacific. If you've seen earlier, there was a sergeant that they were zooming in on. That was to be John Basilone, who later on gets the Medal of Honor, and it's because of him, when he went back to fight, he got killed a second time, which is why nowadays, once you get the medal, you stay home. Influential leaders, we're going to do one on John Basilone in the future to come. You're going to have to excuse me every now and again. I'm going to have to look down to read my notes, and I got to put my glasses on because I'm just falling apart on schedule. So we go back to Chesty Puller, did his 37 years. He retired Lieutenant General, and his unit was the 1st Marine Division. That was the unit I retired out of as well. Has a lot of history. His commands was the 4th Battalion, 2nd Battalion, the 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, and the 1st Marine Regiment. So he commanded quite a bit. And in his conflicts, the Banana Wars, occupation of Haiti, occupation of Nicaragua, the Battle of Augusta Carta, and he fought in World War II. Actions along the Manaluc, Battle of Henderson Field, Battle of Cape Cloister, and the Battle of Peleliu. Then he moved up to Korea, the Battle of Incheon, the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. Then he gets into his ribbons and such, and that's where he has the 5 Navy Crosses, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, 3 Air Medals, and a Purple Heart. So just a real quick, I'm going to put it on here just to give you an idea. This was his fruit salad, as that we call it, that you wear in the uniform. Just trying to get around my flags. And he had quite an impressive bunch of ribbons, and with the 5 Navy Crosses, he was just somebody who didn't like taking orders from others. He had a very impressive career. When he was 5 Navy Crosses for his first one, for his actions on February 16th to August 19th, which he had led 5 successful engagements against superior numbers of armed bandit forces. He returned to stateside in 1931 of July and completed a long company officers course at Fort Benning, Georgia. Returning to Nicaragua on the 20th of September to October 1st earned him his 2nd Navy Cross. And it kind of goes on to what his Navy Crosses are in correlation. He's had he was one of our, to this day, one of our best leaders that the Marines have ever had. He believed in leadership from the front, not from the rear. Nowadays, the officers, they will give the commands up the chain, and very few, especially the rank of a full bird colonel, that you will see in the front lines pushing forward, which was why that's where he was most of the time. As a corporal, Puller received orders to serve in Haiti as a lieutenant, seeing action in Haiti while in the United States. He was working under a treaty with Haiti to participate over 40 engagements during this thing that he did was against the Coco rebels, and attempted to regain his command as an officer twice in 1922. And then he served as an adjutant general to Alexander Vandergriff, future Commandant of the Marine Corps. And anybody who knows General Vandergriff as well was another fine officer. And later on, like I said, we can go through a list of officers all day, and they're all, in their own way, they're all worthy of what they've done. They're amazing. World War II, at this time, Puller was a major. He returned to the U.S. on August 28th in 41. After a short leave, he was given command of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, known as the 1-7. Of the 1st Marine Division stationed at New River, North Carolina, the new Marine Amphibious Base, which would soon be renamed for its 13th Commandant of John A. Lejeune Marine Corps Base. Early in the Pacific, the theater, as you heard him talk about the Pacific being their theater, he always referred to it that the Marines formed a newly created 3rd Marine Brigade and arrived to defend the Samoan on May 8th. Later, he would redeploy from the brigade to September 4th, 42, and rejoin the 1st Division at Guadalcanal on September 18th of 42. And then soon leaving Guadalcanal, Puller led his forces in actions along the Manaluc, in which Puller quick thinking saved 3 of his companies from a severe ambush attack. The companies were surrounded and cut off by a large Japanese force. But Puller ran to the shores, signaling United States Navy destroyers and the USS Minnesota, and then directed the destroyers to provide fire support while landing crafts were able to get into position. This action earned him his Bronze Star. So he wound up putting himself in harm's way to do this. And he's done quite a bit while in World War II, and in the, if you watch the miniseries The Pacific, that's where he got wounded. And I believe his Purple Heart is going to be in here as well. And then he had we go up to the rank of colonel. Puller was then made executive officer of the 7th Marine Regiment while he was serving in his capacity at Cape Cloister. Puller earned his 4th Navy Cross for overall performance of his duties December 26th of 1943 and January 19th of 1944. During this time, when the battalion commander of the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, and later 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, while under heavy machine gun and mortar fire, he organized a battalion to lead a successful attack against the heavy fortified Japanese defense position. He was promoted to colonel effective February 1st of 44, and by the end of the month, he was named commander of the 1st Marine Regiment. Colonel Puller would lead the Marines onto battalion at Peleliu, one of the bloodiest battles in the Marine Corps during the September and October of 44. Actions where he earned his 1st Legion of Merit. During the summer of 1944, Puller's younger brother, Samuel D. Puller, the executive officer of the 4th Marine Regiment, was killed by a sniper on Guam. And Puller returned to the States in November of 44 and was named executive officer of the Infantry Training Regiment at Camp Lejeune. 2 weeks later, commanding officer. After the war, he was made director of the 8th Reserve District in New Orleans and commanded the Marine Barracks at Pearl Harbor. Shortly after that, the Korean conflict broke out, and at the outbreak of the Korean War, Puller was again assigned as the commander of the 1st Marine Regiment, in which made a landing on Incheon on September 15th of 1950, earning his Silver Star for leadership from September 15th to November 2nd. He was awarded his 2nd Legion of Merit and was awarded Distinguished Service Cross from the Army for actions from November 29th to December 5th on the same year of his 5th Navy Cross for his actions during December 5th and 10th at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. It was during the battle where he made the famous quote, "We've been looking for the enemy for some time now, and we finally found them. We're surrounded." That simplifies things. This officer was amazing. He went out looking for trouble, and 9 times out of 10 he found it, and he didn't know how to back away. And in January of 51, he was promoted to Brigadier General. Now that's a 1 star up on the epaulets. And he was assigned duty as the 1st Division Commander of the 1st Marine Division on February 4th. However, his Superior Major General O.P. Smith was his immediate supervisor, was hesitant to transfer the command of the 5th Battalion Corps when the Army's commander, Major General Bryant Moore, died. Smith's temporary transferred Puller's left in command of the beloved 1st Marine Division, which he would serve as the ADC until his completion of tour and return to the United States on May 20th, 1950. And General Puller was subsequently received promotions to Major General and Lieutenant General and served in various command and capacities, unit his retirement in November of 1955. So, relations. Puller's son, Louis Brewell Puller Jr., known as Puller, it was his son. He was a highly decorated Marine in Vietnam, while serving with the 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. Lewis Jr. was severely wounded by a mine and when exploded, losing both his legs and parts of his hands. Lieutenant General Puller broke down sobbing at the sight of his seeing his son in the hospital for the first time. That was one thing to hear about your son, and he's following in your footsteps, and here you are, then you see your son like that. I imagine it would, it would really do it on anybody. Puller's father-in-law was a Colonel William D. Davy, and he was a VMI graduate who was a captain, who was a commanding officer of 2 heavy reinforced rifle companies on the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines from January 21st to April 14th of 68. And it is I still don't know if they has proven this, but I was told time and time that Puller was a distant cousin to another hard-charging and decorated general who happened to be Army General George S. Patton. So if that is true, then I've been hearing it for years. So, and then we do have the thing with all of his awards that I showed you on his fruit salad. And one of his citations for his first Navy Cross was a first lieutenant. Puller successfully led his forces into 5 successful engagements against superior numbers of armed bandits on the 16th of February, 1930, to July 1930, and again on August 19th of 1930. With the results of the bandits were in each engagement, they were completely, they said they were completely routine, with loss of 9 killings and many wounded. But his intense and force of leadership without the thought of his own personal safety, by great physical exertion and by suffering many hardships, Lieutenant Puller summarized all obstacles and defeated 5 successful and severe blows against the occupational bandits of the Republic of Nicaragua. Then on his second one, he was again a first lieutenant, or still a first lieutenant, I should say. And while in command of a Guardian patrol from September 20th to October 1st in 1932, Lieutenant Puller and his command of 40, led by Gunnery Sergeant William A. Lee, another Marine, serving as his company gunny. They were 48. There was 48 of them, and they were 100 miles north of the nearest base. The patrol was ambushed on September 26th on 1932. Insurgents from 150 as well-prepared positions, armed with less than 7 automatic weapons and various classes of small arms, well supplied with ammunition. Early in the combat, Gunnery Sergeant Lee, second in command, was seriously wounded and reported as dead. The guerrillas immediately dispersed behind Lieutenant Puller in this point and was killed by the first burst of fire. Lieutenant Puller was also great courage, coolness, and discipline of military judgment. So distinguished the fire and the movement of his men and the enemy were driven from the high grounds to the right of his position. And then by a flanking movement forced the high grounds and left them, confused with the loss, and they killed many of them and wounded. And it pretty much starts here on his second, and it ends here. And this is his second award for his Navy Cross. This is the one that, if he was ever to be nominated for the Medal of Honor, it would have been this one. This thing goes on, how with great courage, coolness, and display of military judgment. So Lieutenant Puller, with great courage and the movement of his men and the enemy, driven them back to the high grounds. They kind of reworded it from this one to this one. And the single victory in the jungle country with no lines, the courage and of his patrol and the commander, the returning to the wounded on the patrol, the ambush twice by superior forces on September 30th. On both occasions, the enemies were depressed and with severe losses on their side. So he hit and he hit and he kept going. Now we go into his third Navy Cross. And this is by, he's a commanding officer of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. And this is against the Japanese forces on Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands on the night of the 24th and 25th of October of 1942. By this time, he's Lieutenant Colonel Puller. And the Lieutenant Colonel is the silver oak leaf, almost like a major's, but it's not gold, it's silver, and commonly referred to as a light colonel. And with the battalion holding a mile-long front on the heavy downpour of rain, the Japanese forces of superior in numbers launched a vigorous assault against the position of a line which passed through the dense jungle. Withstanding the enemy's determined attack, Lieutenant Colonel Puller not only held his battalion to its positions until 8 in the afternoon the next day. By his tireless devotion to duty and cool judgment under fire, he preserved the hostile from breaking through the lines and was largely responsible for the successful defense of the section to the section assigned to his troops. So he has a book about it was called Marine, about Chesty Puller. And what had happened on that particular incident, whenever we used to dig foxholes, our radiuses the foxholes could only be so many meters apart, 10 meters, 15 meters, and then you would put little sticks in the ground so you knew your fields of fire. You would shoot from this side of a foxhole to this side, and then the other person's foxhole would intersect so you wouldn't overshoot and shoot the person next to you. So with him, his foxholes had to be a little bit further than usual, so that weakened the line, because now we used to be able to, from one hole to another, you can usually hear commands come down the line and pass it on saying, smoking lamp is out or 50-50 alert. I can really go on a lot with Chesty, but I'm already being told my time is coming up. So I'm going to give some culture on Puller. He's loved by the enlisteds, and there was this one instant, and I always loved this story. It was in the book when he was in Quantico, Virginia, and he was driving down the street of Quantico, and a lieutenant had this private saluting him because the private failed to salute the lieutenant. So Puller pulled up in the Jeep, and he says, "What's going on?" And he says, "Well, he didn't salute me." And the lieutenant and General Puller says, "Well, that's good, but every time he salutes you, you're supposed to salute him back." And he had the private saluting the lieutenant 100 times. So Puller said, "You will salute him back 100 times." And Puller stood there for the first 25, 30 salutes. And I barely made a dent in General Puller, but Jeff's telling me we're done. So this is something new I want to do. It's called Influential Leaders, and maybe next week we'll do it on Chesty Puller. We might be out on location next week. I'm not going to say anything right now. So remember, if you have a story, I want to hear it, and I want to share it with everyone else. Have a safe 911, and let's remember that we all lost somebody over there, and if not, we lost Americans. See you here next week. Semper Fi.
Left foot, left foot, left foot. Y'all on the job.